It's Thomas Drance of The Athletic, and the offspring says, Drance, sucker, Drance, you never had a chance. What do you think of the Canucks' chance the rest of the way in this series, bud?
Well, I think it would be great if they didn't do the reverse horse meme. You know that horse meme where the start of it is really detailed and then it falls off and becomes a child drawing at the end? The Canucks are doing that, but in reverse. They don't show up for 58 minutes, couldn't find the offensive zone with a map at Rogers Place last night, and then, they score a 6-on-5 goal and somehow tie it up only to have a heartbreaking Evan Bouchard goal going against them with 38 seconds to play. Tough one. Tough one. You could see how emotional Canucks players were post-game. This Oilers team has a lot of firepower. Like, there's no question that the Canucks just missed a pretty important shot in a series that they're in. It's tied, right? Both the Vancouver's losses have just been by a single goal. And yet, Edmonton's outshot them by 30 at 5-on-5 across these 4 games. In every single game they've played, there's been at least a 20-minute stretch, a 25-minute stretch where Edmonton just completely throttles them. The discrepancy in the caliber of these two teams has been apparent, laid plain for all to see. And yet, can Edmonton beat the Canucks 2 of 3 with Calvin Pickard in net, right? Like, can they finally get to playing the sort of mistake-free hockey, the focused hockey that they actually brought for the first time all series in Game 4? Can they do that 2 more times? It's an open question for sure, because this Canucks team definitely is like more focused, more bought in, and frankly, they've been more clutch, right? They've been able to do more with what opportunities they've received in this series. So that's kind of the dynamic. A classic sort of scrappy underdog versus overwhelming juggernaut with significant flaws type best of 3 here between the Canucks and the Oilers.
You mentioned tough one. Nice tweet last night, by the way.
Oh, man. Yeah, so, look, obviously, I mean, it's not a prediction. It's not like I was predicting that the Canucks may never lose again, but they were so dead in the water when Brock Besser tied that up. At least it looked like Brock Besser to me at the time. It actually went into the net off Dakota Joshua's skate. So it's Joshua's goal. But, they were so dead in the water until they get that double deflection bounce past Pickard. And I sort of thought to myself, there was a moment earlier in the season where a Canucks player sort of yelled that after the Canucks swept through the 3 New York teams, right? And really put on like a show. Like, there were big, incredible goals scored by all of Vancouver's best players. And, I've been a little bit critical of this team, to put it mildly, in the past. And, I walked into the locker room and I had a Canucks player just yell out, we may never lose again, print that. But they were mostly just messing with me. And for whatever reason, when the Canucks scored and I was like, man, they're going to pull this off again, that comment came to me. And so I tweeted it just sort of tongue firmly in cheek. And then the reactions after the fact, including the "there will be blood" tweet from you gentlemen, I was crying laughing. Like, that was one of those ice cold takes that you're not even upset about. You're just laughing at the pandemonium as it sort of unfolds on what you thought was an innocuous tweet when you sent it.
So I like your move. You're passing the buck. You're blaming somebody else for saying it, and then you're like, "Hey, I am but a simple reporter."
Yes, I'm simply chronicling what I see and hear.
Just trying to get the spirit of the thing.
I will say, because Canucks fans are so unhinged, someone was like, Drance is such a healthy young man. He may never get sick again. And I was like,
no.
Whoa. Like, dude, let's calm down. Anyway.
Well, that's a good segue into what has been, I think, the most heated and hate-filled series of the playoffs so far. The Canucks and Oilers fan bases fucking hate each other, and seemingly so do the players, because there's been a lot of bullshit going on in this series. Did you anticipate sort of how nasty it would be both on and off the ice heading into the series?
Oh, yeah. And I knew, because the Oilers have this like atomic power play, right? I actually genuinely believe, because the Oilers haven't had that many power play opportunities in this series. I genuinely believe that their power play is like 10% too good. Okay. And what I mean by that is it's so good that I actually don't think they get as many calls as they should, because NHL officials don't want to like decide the game. They feel like they're putting their finger on the scale a little too much, given the way that team operates 5-on-4. Like, I actually think it's almost too good to be optimal, right? They would be better off. They'd score more goals on their brilliant, best in history power play if it was like 5 to 10% less effective. It's a genuine thing I believe, having watched the series to this point. But the dynamic of that power play ensured, right, that every call and the consequences of it would be magnified to an absurd extent, right? Like, I knew coming into this series that every whistle that got blown would be widely complained about in both markets. And I knew, too, that the Canucks, with the way that they defend and with the way they interfere with players in particular, right? Like, this Canucks team, they throw a lot of picks on just about every breakout. And they play pretty physical defense, especially blue line in. So, I sort of knew that the way that Vancouver's style and approach would match with, the potency of the Oilers power play, and then the penchant of every Canadian market to complain wildly about calls, to just create sort of a tinderbox environment. And then, of course, Canucks Twitter, we all know. I mean, you guys are in Boston. You remember 2011, which was like the advent of social media. I mean, there's no way. Like, you guys have had Bruins series against like Habs Twitter, right? I mean, you guys have covered 15 years of playoffs. I mean, do you remember there being as much animosity as what you saw in 2011?
Physically, I was scared of Canucks fans in 2011 because one ran up to me. They like got into an area where they shouldn't have been in Vancouver and was like, "Where's Milbury?" And I was like, "You think I'm hiding Mike Milbury?" And they're like, "Where is he? Where's Milbury?" Because I think Milbury called them gay or something. I don't know what he said. I don't think he said gay. He said the Sedin girl. He said something like not great. Sorry, Mike Milbury.
No, he didn't say it, but he implied it, right? And I mean, that's the point. The fact is that you don't want to mess with Canucks Twitter. You can already see Oilers fans capitulating online. They're like, "Whoa, we didn't realize what we'd stepped into. This is an absolute hornet's nest." But that's the case. That's how it goes. Like, we all know what hockey Twitter is. It's the worst. Like, true sickos across the board. And yet, very much like Bane voice, right? Like, a hockey Twitter might have borrowed the darkness, but like Canucks fans were born into it. Like, this is what Vancouver hockey Twitter does. And I mean, they brought their A game without question in this.
I didn't know that they had it like that. Do they hate you?
Oh yeah, but like,
okay,
I'm also from them. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird. You either die a hero or live long enough to become the villain, right? I think that's sort of the key formulation here, to channel another Batman reference, which is appropriate because everyone on Canucks Twitter seems to think they're like the Dark Knight.
Who do they like?
Defending the Canucks hockey team. They like the fact they like each other when they're attacking other fan bases, but not when the team is bad and they just attack one another. That's really the answer. It's look, it's an interesting mix. Here's the fact of the matter, though, right? Like, Vancouver is so different from every other hockey market on the planet, because all the other Canadian fan bases are like, with the exception of Montreal, where it's split between English and French speaking media. So it's sort of like two smaller pools that combine into one, and two sort of smaller fan bases that combine into one big fan base. Like, there's like a certain level of respect, I think, that the rest of Canada tends to show in terms of their hockey consumption habits, right? Like, in terms of the storylines they want, right? The way that the Canucks are covered in Vancouver is very much like the NFL or college football or the NBA are covered in the United States, which is a way we don't usually see the NHL covered, right? So it's like every day you've got the classic, like, Elias Pettersson struggling. Like, what should they do with him? Should he be scratched? Should he be traded? Right? Like, very much like you see, that they do on ESPN when they do Lakers content, like whatever the Lakers story of the day. JJ Redick, he'll be cynically like, it's that level of scrutiny applied to the Canucks in a way that just like does not happen in the rest of Canada and does not happen in the United States for NHL teams. So it's like an American style of coverage, which the rest of Canada doesn't really follow, but all of it focused like a laser on one team in a relatively robust, like 2.5 million people media market. It's incredible. It's amazing. It's super fun to be a part of, but it's a lot. And I do think when other fan bases get exposed to it, as Oilers fans have found out, it can be a dizzying experience.
Culture shock.
Yeah.
100%.
You mentioned Elias Pettersson and some of the heat that he's been getting. Obviously not having a good playoff run so far. 1 goal, 3 assists in 10 games. They've been outscored 2-5 with him on the ice at 5-on-5. He's been playing most of his time with Nils Höglander, who has 1 assist in 8 games, Ilya Mikheyev, 0 points in 10 games, and Sam Lafferty, 0 points in 10 games. So diagnose the problems with Elias Pettersson right now, because is it his fault? Is it the guys that he's playing with? Is it a mixture of both? Like, what are you seeing from Elias Pettersson? What is the problem?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing enough. The thing about a player like Pettersson is, there we go. He's so imperious and impactful and intelligent. He impacts the game in so many different ways, and it's so quiet around him right now, right? And that's real, and that's about his individual contributions. That said, the environment that he's being played in 5-on-5 is not doing him any favors. Nils Höglander, a 24 goal scorer during the regular season, has struggled in his sort of first appearance in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And, last night he plays with Sam Lafferty and Ilya Mikheyev, and those two gentlemen have combined for 4 goals across their last 95 games, playoffs and regular season included. And, that's tough. And then people will do the old, well, he's a star player, he should be elevating his line mates. And it's like, yeah, but go look at what those players have produced playing with Pettersson over the last couple of years. Like, they've all produced numbers unthinkable at any other stage of their career. So, he's doing it, but he doesn't really have enough to work with. And that said, his shot, he hasn't been a willing enough shooter ever since the first 2 games against the Predators when they were blocking everything, right? He had like 9 attempts in that second game and didn't get a single one through. And ever since then, it seemed like he's been gun shy on his release. He's not getting the same torque or power on his release, which is one of the reasons why his injury status or his health has been widely speculated about in this marketplace. And, his 2-way game is still fine. Like, he's still good defensively. There's still things he's doing well, including winning a key draw on the sequence that ultimately led to the Besser shot, which deflected in off Joshua's skate last night. But he's not doing the loud, skilled, dual threat, dynamic stuff we're used to seeing from him. And, that's a problem. Like, in this series alone, Pettersson's mostly faced bottom 6 competition, and he's not winning. Like, the Canucks are not winning his minutes against Derek Ryan and Ryan McLeod. You're not beating the Oilers if that's the case. Like, you're just not. And so they need more. There's no question about it.
Pete made the astute observation the other day that we all expected the winner of Dallas Avalanche to come out of it battered and bruised from how grueling a physical series it would be. And that one ends up looking at being kind of a cakewalk for Dallas. And it's Edmonton, Vancouver, that's the one where people are going to come out of it dead. I think that point is no better made than by looking at the fact that Canucks are trying to fucking kill Mattias Ekholm. And I think that is a smart strategy for them, because they must think the only way we get, like, obviously, you want to neutralize McDavid. Obviously, you want to find a way to stop Draisaitl or Hyman or Nugent Hopkins or Bouchard on the power play. But if there's one guy that they should want to be really, really physical with, it probably is Ekholm. And we saw it on the Elias Lindholm play where Ekholm thought that it was icing. It wasn't. Smoked him, lit him up. I thought he was dead. Juleson last night in the neutral zone smokes him after he makes the pass to Nugent Hopkins, which leads to a goal. Do you think that there is some kind of strategy there to, we got to really be in this guy's kitchen?
I think there's a strategy to try and wear down that Oilers top pair. I think you can see them going at Bouchard pretty hard as well. And why not? I mean, the Oilers with those 5 guys on the ice, it's something to see. All right, it's something to see. And if you can in any way wear that down, that Oilers sort of top pair, that'll only pay dividends as the series goes along. I love the way that Oilers 5-man unit plays. By the way, like one thing I love to watch is, they'll sort of regroup with McDavid as the puck carrier through the neutral zone. And the moment he gets the puck, both defensemen have a green light and both of them take it at the same time. It's unlike anything you'll see anywhere else in hockey. It almost looks like a roller hockey breakout, but they're just options. Like they have so much faith in McDavid as this puck carrier through the neutral zone. And why wouldn't they? That those guys just go on attack the moment he touches the puck in those situations. It's a blast. And if you can in any way, whittle down on that advantage, if you can in any way be in their head when they're going back for pucks or, just in terms of wearing down an older defenseman who's vital to what the Oilers do well, you got to take that opportunity. That Lindholm line, right? They've been playing physical all series. Garland doesn't give an inch. Like he's undersized, but man, looks like an absolute pain in the neck to try and check or share the ice with. Dakota Joshua is obviously a horse. And Elias Lindholm's like a much sort of grittier player, I think, than a lot of people realize. And so that line's been able to extract, I think, a physical toll on the Oilers, even though they haven't been able to like drive play or spend a lot of time in the offensive zone the way I think the Canucks need them to if they're going to win this series. To this point, they've really just thrown a lot of hits and come up big offensively in big moments. Now, by no means am I being critical of their performance, but given the way that Edmonton's top 6 is just dictating play every time they're on the ice, 5-on-5, I do think at some point that line's going to need to start to string together some heavy shifts, or, they can throw as many hits on Ekholm as they want. It's going to be the Canucks who get worn down.
I wanted to ask you, Artur Silovs has been one of the best stories of this playoff so far. We to the point where like we're not hearing anything about Thatcher Demko anymore. Like in the first round, everybody was like, what's the status of Thatcher Demko? When is he going to be able to come back? Do you think at this point it is Silovs net until the Vancouver Canucks are out, unless the bottom kind of falls up for Silovs? And do you anticipate things going much more south than what they've been for Silovs to this point?
So in terms of what we're hearing about Demko, I'd expect business to pick up this week. So the Canucks have a team day off today, but I was watching him skate after the Canucks morning skate on Tuesday, and I was pretty surprised by how dynamic some of the physical movements that he was going through with Ian Clark were. Like I'm talking about a guy dropping into the butterfly and moving laterally on the ice along his knees. Now, I don't know enough about goaltending to specify whether or not it was like a wide butterfly or not. It didn't look to be at like full pace in terms of the reps, but he was pushing into the post too. And that's a pretty advanced level to be at, given the fact that he sustained an additional knee injury, just under a month ago, 3 weeks ago now. And that it was a second non-contact injury in the same knee in a 6-week stretch. So I was pretty surprised by that. It was still a recovery skate. He wasn't being like shot. He wasn't facing shooters, even among like the scratches. Like it wasn't a dynamic environment. It wasn't a practice environment. It was more of a rehab or an individual drill style environment. But it looked advanced enough that I'm really interested to see what and whether or not he might join the full group or at least join the rinse group of scratches following the Canucks morning skate on Thursday. If he does, I don't know that he'd necessarily be an option yet for a game presumably set to be played on Monday of next week, if necessary, which would be Game 7. But it looks to me like he's getting a lot closer than I would have imagined he might, even as recently as 48 hours ago. Like this was a more advanced looking set of drills than I would have expected to see from him, just given sort of what he's been through injury-wise over the course of the last 8 weeks. So anyway, in terms of what the club will do with Silovs, I thought last night was his best game, right? Like it was only his second loss, and yet I thought it was far more impressive than a lot of the work he's put in some of the 4 wins, perhaps with the exception of the Game 6 shutout in Nashville that punched Vancouver's ticket to the second round. I thought he was awesome. Just dynamic, decisive, calm. I thought he withstood some pretty withering persistence from the Oilers. Attacking players made some stellar saves. Keyed Vancouver's ability to come back and level the score, in part because that game probably should have been 4 or 5-0, 50 minutes into the contest. He's been awesome. And I think he's been at such a high level that it does sort of complicate the Demko question, even if he is cleared to return, because like how close to 100% does Demko need to be at this point to supplant Silovs? Like, I don't think it's 90%. I think it's probably higher than that. I think you've got to get pretty close to 100% at this point before you're replacing Silovs in net, just given how reliable he's been and given the fact that he clearly has the confidence of this group of players. You can even tell just in the reaction that he has and that his teammates have when goals go in. There's no shrugs. There's no, there's none of that. Like, it's very clear that they think that he gives them a chance to win. And that matters so much at this time of year, especially when you're a fill-in goaltender, the way that he has been, or at least as he was before he entered this series and kind of caught fire.
We all silly like the mayor.